Yay.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time it may be for you. Welcome to Politicoonts. This is the introductory episode, the very first ever episode. Where we will go from here is anybody's guess. Could be nowhere, which is quite likely in the saturated market that is podcasting. It could be somewhere. It could be to the top. Who knows? But why are we looking to go there at all, and what is Politicoonts? Well, simply put, Politicoonts is a fusion of an acceptable slang for cunts and politics. Because what are we? Fucking cunts. And what do we talk about? Fucking politics. Let's start with who we are. My name is Michael.
And I'm Shane.
And we're two dudes who know a little bit about the stuff we talk about. What that means what that means is I've studied extensively the issues at hand. I often try to stay informed and up to date. I have a fascination, much to the detriment of most people around me, with American and global politics.
I am someone who has been what I call a political junkie for now about 8 years. I come from England, so my views are very different from most people's, given my political situation in my country. And I just want general discourse, so...
Which is a fantastic goal to have, seeing as, at least in my country, general discourse hasn't existed for a while.
Can say that again.
General discourse hasn't existed for a while.
Oh.
It's been a fucking goddamn nightmare. And by the by, we will fucking raise our voices and curse sometimes. So if you don't like that, fuck off.
Yeah, we get loud and we don't agree on everything from time to time. So,
but the point is, we're still friends, regardless of our beliefs.
It's just the passion we have behind it.
Absolutely. And people can mistake that passion for anger, and that's fine. But just know that we do quite enjoy each other's company, even if we don't enjoy each other's point of view in the moment. It's important, and let's talk about that for a second and how important that is to have in a society, is you can disagree with someone without making them your mortal enemy. It's okay to have a different view and a different idea, because at the end of the day, everything's subjective, right? Your idea could be the right way to go. It's just we won't see it that way. It could be the wrong way to go, and you won't see it that way. There are facts, and facts are, regardless of your opinion of them, facts are facts. And an idea that doesn't address those facts is likely a bad one. But in certain issues, actually all issues, it's totally okay to foresee a different direction, come from a different philosophy, have a different subscription. All that I ask is, as a country, we return to listening to what the other side has to say without branding everybody like Hitler or something. Because that's been happening for far too long here.
I think another thing is understanding people's intents. People don't look at someone's intents. They might be wrong on the subject matter, but their intents can be good.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, 100%. You can be misinformed, but have good intentions. And if you're willing to listen to what the other side has to say, you could pick up on the fact that you're misinformed. You could understand. You can reach an understanding that maybe you are not in the right. Or vice versa, you could learn something new. It'll just change your entire perspective on a whole slew of things. It's a beautiful thing when we come together and just listen to what each other have to say. And we've sort of forgotten how to do that as a country, as a continent, haven't we? In recent times. Everything's just become so life or death. And I want to talk about for a second why that is. And you can dispute this if you like. I do have facts to back this up. I blame the overwhelming majority on it, on A, social media misinformation, and B, mainstream media buying into and feeding that social media misinformation. And C, old school media itself writing articles purposefully designed to have you reach a conclusion that has been programmed into the article itself on the information presented.
Can I just say there is a D to that if we want to talk about stuff which is honestly the tribalism nature that we have?
Oh, yeah.
Is causing a lot of problems as of late as well.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about what led to the tribalism as well, but we could have that conversation, and we will have that conversation at a later time and on another episode. There's lots of factors driving that, and they're important to get into and understand as well as an informed society. But first, the business.
Sorry that.
How fucking dare you son of a bitch!
But yeah, obviously we're starting this at the beginning of a new president in America.
That's right.
We thought this would be the best time, given honestly for the last, I'd say, 8 years minimum, if not longer, America has been very divided, very, again, your media, it's really been, you can see over the last 8 years, its biases very clearly. It's, as Michael here said, the propaganda it uses in its, whether it be from its wording or how it gets us to think.
Right. It's a suggestive wording.
Yeah. And it's a case of, we thought, if it's what could be a fresh start, not saying it is or isn't, but what could be a fresh start for America, we thought we'll do this fresh content here.
Fresh content, fresh presidency, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
God, that's a show I've not seen in a long time.
It's a great one.
Oh, definitely. So I think, Michael, if you're all right, we can start actually talking about, just give a general idea of where you fall politically, what you label yourself, to give some general census before we go in detail of what that means.
Sure. And we'll go into detail on the Overton window at some later point as well, but because of 2016, I used to label myself a libertarian. I now call myself a centrist, with conservative-leaning fiscal stance and a progressive-leaning social stance.
As for me, myself, I call myself, in the world politics, I'd say I'm center-left. In the American discourse, I would say I'm what you'd consider being your left progressives. Or maybe a better term, generally speaking, is the social democratic socialism stance. I fall around that area on the scale.
Okay. And can you give an example of maybe, for trying to make the conversion's sake, a social issue and your stance on it?
If we take my social issue on, I think a good one would be, I say abortion's a pretty good one, as that's a pretty divisive topic.
Oh, yeah.
For me, I'd consider myself very moderate on the issue. I'm pro-choice as long as it's up to 20 weeks before the point of viability. Afterwards, it becomes, for me, only in the cases of fatal defect in the womb, life to the mother, obviously rape and incest, the major topics that we discuss.
Yeah.
That's my view on that sort of stance. And then my economic stance, to give a better perspective of overall what it means, I believe in a very Scandinavian style. Finland is and Norway are probably the two I lean more towards for welfare state.
Okay. I'd say I would let's see. Let's on the same issue I'll go with abortion. I'm surprised that we didn't agree here. I'm actually in favor of full open abortions up to the end of the second trimester. Now, what that means is past the point of scientifically or medically determined viability, yes.
Yeah.
But not to the point where the baby is fully formed.
Yeah.
And ready to be birthed. Because even a 7-month-old baby can be birthed and survive.
Okay, so that also shows that again we don't have full on agreement for everyone.
Yeah. As I would say that I follow some religious stances, but my religion is definitely not one of the main three.
If you want to talk about religion, I'm very anti-theist. I'd like to see a natural decline in religion and how much it can hold people accustomed. I think it should be natural, though. I do stress that as much as I will fight against all religions. I want to see it a natural way rather than legislative ways.
Oh, for sure. It should have no business in legislation.
No.
Or any business being a source of lobbying either. That's crazy. At least to me, that's how I would word that. I would consider it insanity.
So
pre-7 determined political policy since the theocracies of the pre-Renaissance.
And this is the thing, of course, in America, religion at the moment being a rather important thing to so many, as much as it is declining, it's still holds its place. So that's another topic for another time at this moment.
Yes. A deeply entrenched thing in the United States, yes.
Yeah.
Certainly more so than in Europe, ironically, the birthplace of all of modern Christendom. Yeah.
So talking about what we were saying earlier, of course, hey, new president of the United States.
What's his name, Fishy? What's his name?
Joe Biden.
Oh, I thought it was Chester Cheetah. Or was that the old one? Who fucking knows anymore?
So of course, just general discussion then on this. Out of what do you feel is going to be the main case with Biden? Would you have did you actually, with you being American, I can ask this, did you support him in the 2020 election?
I didn't oppose him. Support, I'd say, is inaccurate.
Okay. Okay, better way of putting it. Did you vote for him?
No. I voted for the Libertarian candidate.
Fair enough. Obviously, with me not being an American, I cannot vote. However, if I could, I would not have myself. Surprisingly, but I'd have probably gone with the Green Party.
Right.
But yeah. So anyway, as
buying into Trump's election fraud conspiracy, what if you totally did vote here?
Yeah, just like how certain dead people voted.
Right, and the Cylons voted here too.
Yeah, got my name on one of those ballot slips, yeah.
And the dead voted in record numbers.
But yeah, so obviously we've now had his inauguration. It is official. He is the 26th president of the United States. If
46th,
I'm correct.
46th. You missed a few.
Just a few. Just a lot. But sorry, yeah, the 46th president of the United States. Obviously just had his inauguration. What do you find about that, Arga? Michael?
I think it was a beautiful inauguration. I think that it symbolized a lot of what people wanted, and I think that's a good thing, even if I don't directly support the man himself. At least not yet. I don't really have a lot to go on, just a first week in office.
Yeah.
But I think that this country needed a politician I think this country needed somebody who can speak a coherent sentence. And I think we got that. I think we would have gotten that from the majority of candidates in the race. I don't think it had to be Biden. The Democratic Party obviously disagrees, and so do the American public. But here we are in Biden's America, about a week in at this point, at the time of recording.
Yep.
And so far, I'm a fan of at least day one. We'll get into in just a moment his policy enactments, some more friendly for me than others. But all in all, I think we needed this. I think we just needed a regular fucking politician.
As for what my views on the inauguration, I've been loving all the memes coming out of it.
Oh God, Bernie, yeah.
Yeah.
America's granddad, back in the spotlight.
I do like how one old man with a pair of mittens has been bigger online than the man being inaugurated himself.
That should be a statement as to how most of America views Joe Biden at this moment. Yeah.
I found it being interesting compared to other inaugurations. Obviously, COVID, the insurrection that happened. It was such a difference of how it was done.
Right, and the large military presence as well.
Yeah, I think it was important that he still had his oath on the stairs. You know, because that is a tradition and a symbolism of certain points of America. So I think that was good for you all.
And but the honestly, wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier.
Yeah, but it was no crowds, again, the military presence. It was definitely a difference to what we've seen in the past with inaugurations.
It felt as apocalyptic as people want you to believe things are in this country. It really did.
Yeah.
It was like watching a wartime inauguration with the foe on our doorstep. And I don't want to sound dramatic in saying that. It's just that's what it looked like to me. It looked like China had invaded and occupied the fucking West Coast, and we were having a transition of power at the moment, and that's how we did it. That's what it looked like.
But it is honestly, I think a funny point of this is obviously he's the commander-in-chief, and seeing the military, a part of the military force that he was going to command there as well, was a very interesting presence.
Oh yeah. Jill Biden with her cookies. Although that wasn't at the inauguration, but
obviously we had the poem that was said. I know a lot of people enjoyed that poem. Me personally, not so much, but I'm not one for the arts and culture. And then obviously we got to see members of, whether it from all across the aisle, the Senate and the House and that represented there.
Yeah.
So was again very weird. So this is my second inauguration I've watched. The first one being obviously Trump's.
Right, because you're a youngin'.
Yes, I am a young one. Yes.
He sounds a lot older though, doesn't he? Everybody sounds a lot older than me, even maybe.
As of this year, I am 22 years old.
A fresh-faced young pup.
Yes. But again, the difference in American politics and my own is an interesting suit. But yeah, really has been. Obviously, we've now had his first day, and as you said, we're in the first week. So, want to talk about some of the orders he's now done on his first day?
Yeah, let's talk about day one. Let's move on to day one. Wrapping up with the inauguration. Let's just let's call it a bizarre one, but nonetheless, there was plenty of positivity to take. And, returning to that normalcy was overall a thing that America has been craving. And the fact that Bernie Sanders is back at the front of public discourse is quite nice as well for the progressive-minded. But let's move on to what Biden did on day one. Highlights.
15. Well, yeah. So the 15 executive orders on day one, if I recall correctly.
I believe 13.
Or 13, is it?
Yeah. Yes.
That is my bad. But of course, as you said, there's some good and some, things that we can discuss as in detail. Obviously, for me, and I know this is a place where we seem to agree but disagree somewhat. Let's take the Paris Agreement.
Okay.
Of course, I'm super happy he's back in it.
Mm-hmm.
I think any step within going forward is better than going backwards on itself. And I feel that's what happened when America pulled out. It was a step backwards, not a step forwards. I don't think it goes nearly far enough, but I am happy with at least something. How about yourself?
I agree that it's a good thing that we are back in it. I don't agree with the timing.
Right.
We're in a position right now where America is having a bit of a employment and jobs crisis, right? And joining Paris and the immediate other executive orders to halt Keystone XL and to halt the border wall. I never agreed with the border wall. I thought it was a horrible waste of time. I may, agree that illegal immigration is bad, but everything that wall represented was everything Trump's little, and I'll call them what they are. They're basically concentration camps on the border. It symbolized everything wrong with that policy, the wall itself. But right now, when it was creating at least some form of employment, do we need to start throwing jobs away?
So,
and more so, do we need to start throwing jobs away without first adding some jobs?
So, if you want to talk about when I said it doesn't go far enough,
yes.
I know this is something that's actually being discussed in America. The Green New Deal, as it's been referred to as, obviously taking a new form of, shall we say, I'm trying to think of a way to infrastructure and, trying to create a greener base and stimulate it through infrastructure builds. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Green New Deal personally. I do think the next major economic boom is going to be like the internet boom was. I think will be in whoever finds a good, long-lasting renewable source.
Yes.
I think that's going to cause the next, economic boom, and whoever finds it's going to have a lot of say on the world stage.
Right.
And I honestly think the Paris Climate Agreement, I think it doesn't go towards that step. And I think, again, it is a symbolic thing more so than actual legislation.
Right.
But like I said, I just personally am happy with any step being taken at this moment in time. I don't think enough people actually realize what some of the consequences in a few years could be of it.
And they're very severe, aren't they?
Yeah, well, some that I say is I think the framing on it, as I've said before, is wrong. I think we frame it as an individualistic problem, like we all have to do our own part to combat change. And again, it's only 30% of people that make up these changes. It's 70% of the world's emissions are led by 10 companies.
And that is fact.
Yeah, I think
we've got up for debate. That is whatever misinformation you read, it is wrong. Check your sources. That is fact.
And I do personally believe that we need to frame it from that point of view. That it's these 10 we need to more address than an individualistic approach. But like I said, I also do and can see why the Paris Climate, as much as it is more symbolic, is important.
Yes.
It at least shows we're willing to acknowledge that something needs to happen.
I agree. But what do you think about the current state of quote-unquote renewables that are being pushed, like solar, for example, which I'm not sure if you're aware, actually, in the creation of it involves a large amount of heat
Yeah.
to melt the quartz silicates,
Yeah.
and that usually, if not always, exclusively comes from coal.
Well, my renewable that I like is I'm gonna struggle saying its name. Is it therium? Therium?
Thorium,
Um,
yes,
thorium.
like
That's it.
the god Thor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's obviously it's similar to nuclear. Well, it is nuclear energy
Yes.
with
Yeah.
a lot less drawback. A hell of a lot less drawback.
And we have
Uh,
1,000 years worth of it that we know about underneath our
yeah.
feet in the United States.
So I think this is something that needs a lot of research and investment into, and if it is going to be the case of that's where we got to go forward, I think it will be a great thing. Um, Obviously, we do have the standard wind, water, and sun energy, of course.
Yes.
I think these are actually great for personal use. However, I think when it comes to the energy for a country, however, it's not enough.
I don't think
Um,
they're acceptable for personal use. I'd go as far as saying they should be outlawed immediately, and the reason being the product themselves, the creation of them, is more detrimental to the environment than just burning coal as fuel.
hmm.
Significantly more, and this is fact. You can look this up, ladies and
Well, I
gentlemen,
mean, again,
and do as well.
this is when you were talking about obviously the solar panels.
Yeah,
However,
I think the whole
like
industry should be scrapped immediately. I think they should be outlawed. I don't want the guys at my door anymore asking me if I want it.
like everyone saying, there are other ones for like personal use. I know it's very rare. You do get water. Some people are able
Water,
to.
yes, that's
Some
fine.
people hydropower. Some people are able to use, though very few, given not many people live near rivers and running water.
Oh,
Wind, wind
wind,
turbines, and
wind,
offshore.
wind. Yes, maybe. The thing about wind, the thing with it, is the lithium-ion batteries that store the energy generated by wind have to be excavated, usually
Yeah.
in China, and cause massive devastation of the local climate and ecosystem.
I mean, wind energy is something my country's doing quite a lot of. We're doing a lot of offshore wind.
Right.
Um, it's been interesting over the last few years. I'll say that. Whether us, it is one of those. I do know someone who actually has a farm and uses a wind turbine, and that seems to work for them. But I think also a problem when we come with wind and water is your location, your geography of your country.
For sure.
I don't know about how windy America gets. I mean, when you have your fucking storms, very. But take my country; it's one of the windiest places in the world.
Mhm.
Ironically enough, even though we don't really have your forms of disasters with it.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet.
Hmm.
Climate change, everyone! Yay!
Yeah.
But so I do think it really does depend. Like, let's face it, water, energy, hydropower wouldn't be so great in Africa.
No.
But so there's a lot to go on, and I think the problem is, as we discussed earlier, discourse around it, and then actually funding the research. We are funding it, but I don't think we're funding near enough of it.
No, the US and Russia are the two worst nations before we left the Paris Climate Agreement at adhering to the Paris Climate Agreement. The two worst in the world.
But I do think, speaking it again, some of the thing that really got me with climate change, like I've always believed the consensus of the scientists with it. That after all, they're experts. They've researched and looked into this.
Okay.
But it's a case of I remember I can remember reading saying possible consequences could be when the heat of the world rises, places like Africa, the droughts they have would be way worse. It'd actually become uninhabitable.
Yes.
The Middle East would also do the same, meaning you would have people go on about immigration at the moment. If there was actually a shortage of water in those countries, you would have an immigration crisis like the world has never seen.
Yeah, you think now's bad in Europe. Good grief.
Yeah. And another one that I read, if that continued, like we did not stop it, that would come to the Western countries. there would be wars over stuff like water eventually, and
It
that if we never,
it's
you
already
know,
starting, and this might be close to home for you, but Europe had a hurricane last year, didn't it?
yeah,
Europe had a
it,
hurricane last year. A hurricane went all the way up the eastern seaboard of the U.S. and
uh,
made landfall in Ireland. That was last year.
yeah,
Now in Spain, right now, south of Spain, there is a new desert,
yeah,
brand new desert.
and it is a case of again that causes food shortage, water shortage. When you notice this, it actually becomes more of a problem that I've noticed. It becomes scarier to think about.
It
Um,
is. It's a lot. It's a lot more severe than people are being led to believe.
yeah. Obviously, as you said, point out the hurricanes and stuff. They are there's more of them now, and they're of higher. Um, I forgot what you call them. Categories, isn't it? You put them in categories.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it's not just the fact you're gonna have more hurricanes. Those hurricanes are gonna be more like Cat 4, Cat 5 hurricanes.
Well, yeah, we used to get like one Cat 4 every couple of years. Fucking now it's every season. Without
Yeah.
fail, a Cat 4 at least. It'll make landfall. At least one will make landfall as a Cat 4 or higher.
Oh, actually, speaking of close to home, the Cat 5 that we had just recently that went through the Caribbean areas and that devastated Central America's islands that it hit.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it just missed America. It turned off and went to the Central American islands, and they got devastated by it. So we can see the damage they're going to cause when they hit land.
Oh yeah.
Earthquakes. I mean, look, the largest volcano in Europe starting to erupt.
Oh yeah.
They're going to cause a lot more. I know America recently. You had a scare with Yellowstone, didn't you? Which,
Something that was a little bit exaggerated in the media, yes, but
like I said, it was a scare. It didn't erupt or anything, but it was still a scare.
yeah.
Um,
It was unexpected geological activity in and around Yellowstone, followed
yeah,
by earthquakes of a moderate to
yeah.
mild to moderate variant along the San Andreas
But
Fault.
of course, the reason this being such a prevalent talking point is we know the consequences if Yellowstone becomes active again.
Oh yeah.
And the fact that it is showing signs is, oh no.
Right.
Um,
And we are somewhat coming due for another
yeah,
Yellowstone event on geologic timescales. There's more or less on average once every 150, 200,000
yeah.
years or so.
Well, I mean, this thing in it, we monitoring it, and we're gonna have to see if this keeps happening at the moment.
Mhm.
It's obviously if there keeps being geological activity, it is going to be a problem. But at
Oh
the
yeah.
moment, it's a scare. I'm not gonna be hyperbolic with it. You just had a little scare.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that plays out.
Right. Now
Uh,
back on track here. Yellowstone is an important topic, and that's going to lead to policy changes in its region of the world in short order. But back on track here, let's talk about Biden, and we've outlined Paris ad
yeah,
nauseum. We've
yeah, we really have. Yeah,
we've outlined
uh,
Paris ad nauseum, and we've discussed in a little bit more than brief the implications of global climate disaster and what that means for the average schmo, i.e., you and me and the listeners
yeah,
at home. And what we need to talk about now is Keystone XL in brief. For those of you who aren't familiar with Keystone XL, it's a pipeline that's supposed to link oil fields in the north of Canada. I don't recall offhand what region they're in, but with refineries along the Gulf of Mexico in the south of Texas and Arizona, New Mexico, so on. And this project has been slashed indefinitely, which was adding jobs and will be or would have been in the future adding more jobs. Now, while I disagree inherently with taking native land and using it as a place to or even forget just the fact that it's native land for a second. It's running right next to a river, and these pipelines have a horrible track record. That's not a matter of debate either. That is fact. All pipelines eventually have catastrophic failures and dump hundreds of thousands of barrels of oil, crude, directly into the land and the groundwater and so on.
Speaking of which, didn't the Gulf of Mexico a few years ago have the spill?
Yes.
Had a huge oil spill,
ExxonMobil, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was the BP and incident and so on. Yeah, and these events are catastrophic, incredibly difficult to clean up. Petroleum distillates are found in aquatic life and shit on land and in the groundwater for generations. They're horrible events. Horrible hazardous events that destroy public health, decimate public interest, and create way beyond what they need to what is acceptable in terms of a risk reward for transporting any sort of crude oil. But would I take that evil for a few jobs in a looming economic crisis? And I only say looming because it can't be proven that this economic crisis will outlast the pandemic yet. It can't be proven that will happen yet. But it, in all likelihood, will. It is a looming crisis. Do we need those jobs cut right now without adding anything back to the workforce? No. But to be fair, it's been a week. We haven't seen what Biden's going to put that money into. It could be renewables. Who knows? It could be renewables. Which will still create jobs.
The first 100 days are the most important because it gives us a perfect outline of what's going to happen throughout the rest of it.
Absolutely. Look at Trump's.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of, and getting back to more, obviously, what Biden's done on his first few days.
Yes.
Speaking the first 100 days, the 100-day mask challenge order thing that he's put forward.
Tell us a bit about that.
So, of course, he's wanting, I don't know if it is mandatory, for Americans to wear masks for 100 days in any indoor area.
Beautiful.
Any social thing. Obviously, this is adding to already things like social distancing and such. But yeah, it seems to be just following, I'd say, what a lot of other countries have been doing. Again, I don't know if it's enforced, however. What's your take on having the mask for 100 days to slow down the pandemic?
Well, obviously, it's a wonderful precedent to set. I think that we should have been doing this the whole time, but unfortunately, Donald Trump, whether he meant to or not, whether it was popular posturing for his own benefit or not, it doesn't matter. He set a precedent where it is okay in America to be anti-mask. And furthermore, that it's acceptable to raid your local, government headquarters. The governor's office of Michigan was raided by these anti-mask protesters. Anti-mask terrorists. They came in with guns. Semi-automatic, military-style weapons. And demanded an end to mask restrictions and restaurant closures. Crazy. Absolutely crazy that this was ever even allowed to happen or encouraged, whether indirectly or directly. Unacceptable. And this administration has a lot to clean up in that regard. And those people, the box is open. You can't close it now. Right? So we got these jackasses. Forgive my French. We got these fucking assholes who now think that somehow it's okay to protest taking precautions in a pandemic. They're not going anywhere. What will this mean for anything Joe Biden tries to accomplish?
As for me, I really am happy with this because as much as Japan has had an uptick in recent times, I think Japan's one of the best models to... I think there was two ways to handle the pandemic. You either do the New Zealand model, which was lock down literally everything until the cases have gone down. Or you could do what is the Japanese model. Now, I think culture plays a big part in this. Obviously, Japan, generally speaking, a lot of people wore face masks anywhere. But the fact that they made it mandatory for everyone to wear it, and then they did localized economic shutdowns, it really made. I think they had less than 1,000 deaths, which, of course, looking at how some other places in the world handle it, Mike, I've got the worst in Europe, of course. Well, bar Ireland now, but generally speaking, when you look at time frames, we've been the worst in Europe, and obviously you've been the worst in the Western worlds.
Oh yeah.
And it is simple that the masks, it stops you both spreading the virus if you have it, but it also reduces your likelihood of getting it. The places where it has to get into your body, your mouth, your nose, they're covered.
Right.
So it overall reduces everyone's risk of infection.
Right. It's not gonna cover your eyes or an open wound, but it is going to cover your major air passageways.
Yeah. And so I really do think this is really important to have. So again, we're gonna have to see if people stick to it. As you say, there's been a precedent set at the moment of probably not.
Yeah.
But
it needs to have consequences. Then those consequences need to be universally agreed upon by all 50 states. A clear federal policy has to be put in. And I think this is just the groundwork for it. I think that is coming in due time. For now, great step in the right direction. To sum my thoughts up, great step in the right direction.
I agree. So one thing that I obviously wanted to talk about as well within his first day was something I think it's a step in the right direction, but I'm really unhappy with it. Obviously, he has extended the pause on student loan payments. Whilst the pandemic's lasting, you're not paying back your student loans because, of course, you know, the economy's shut down and such. It's a lot harder for Americans to find work, to have a stable income at this moment in time.
Oh yeah.
What's your take on pausing the student loan payback?
Well, the interesting thing about pausing student loan paybacks is it doesn't, defer the debt or cancel it, right? So
yeah, it's just extending it.
The question is, when will these bills become due? Is that going to be extended indefinitely until the pandemic is over? Is it going to stop the minute the pandemic is over? Will this lead to a debt crisis? Those are my concerns.
I personally think America's already got a student loan debt crisis.
Oh, for sure. Okay, yeah, well, to be fair, yes. And when I say debt crisis, I mean, is it going to be a lot of debt all of a sudden coming due at the same time for everybody?
Yeah. Obviously, I don't like the fact this has happened. I don't think it goes far enough. I think student loan debt shouldn't be a thing. It should be axed. And
would you say that schools should be public institutions and should be tuition free?
Yes.
Okay.
I was going to get onto that. I believe your colleges and universities should be, mainly for the fact education, I believe, is a right. And I think it's that thing of you shouldn't have to be. I'd say I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this without overstepping it and being hyperbolic. But I don't think you should be, in a form, financially condemned because you want to get better education, because you want to study something. I do think education is just a human right.
And I agree with you. Especially nowadays where it's crucial to literally everything. And my own opportunities and my own experience, I have been limited because I don't have a degree. College, 4-year college or 6-year college degree.
Honestly, I do think some people are. I mean, I didn't take university up in my own country. That being, I did not want the debt associated with it. It's such a debt. I mean, granted, in my country, you only pay back if you meet this requirement, and you only pay back for this long, and so there's regulation around it. But I still didn't want that debt to my name.
Right.
So I finished college and I didn't go on to university.
Right. So debt is a tremendous burden to place on an emerging person.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. Yeah, you think I know Americans are a bit older when they go to university than in England. but you think it is still young people who are trying to find their place in the world, whether it be, as you say, just trying to get education to find a job or something, but they're going to be the ones going out into the world. They will be starting with that world with debt. They're already starting, technically, not even on the start line. They're already further back than everyone else who's not.
Oh yeah.
And I do think it's just a burden that shouldn't be placed upon them.
Oh yeah. It's incredible. It's incredible.
As we also talked about with extending pauses on stuff of payment, the moratorium for extending mortgage and rent pay so people can't be evicted. I think this one is for the duration of the pandemic now. I think this one does have the, this is when it is set to be.
Right, the new COVID-19 relief package, which contained that among many other things that Americans so badly need. We're finally getting the $2,000 stimulus. It's going to be we already got the $600, so $1,400 is coming to everyone who made under $75K in year 2020. That is not set in stone, but that will, in all likelihood, be happening now.
I think this is something that's annoyed me. The fact they campaigned on a 2,000 stimulus check, not a 1,400 and weasel out of it by going, well, we already gave you 600. I think they should have given the two. Well, let's face it, it was a year ago when you got, just less than a year ago, when you got that one-time $1,200, that $600 payment. So it's a case of it's been too long. They can't expect that the 2,000 in total to have lasted this whole pandemic.
No.
I just think the maths on that doesn't work up.
So Shane.
Yes.
Do they have good intentions, or are they Politicoonts?
I think on this one, I think that it was a campaign thing just to get people. I think they're coons because they know what they're doing. I think they've on purpose chose to be weasels on this.
I have to agree. There are people who are less well off than I am, and I am grateful to be in the circumstances and the situation that I'm in.
I also think I'm happy they've extended the rights of you cannot evict someone.
Yeah.
However, I think the second those restrictions come off, what was it? I think it's 40 some. I know it's 40 something % of Americans admitted that they had to miss rent payment during the pandemic. I think when this pandemic is over, it's possible that there is going to be an eviction crisis in America like you've never seen.
Oh yeah.
And I think all they've done so far is extend the delay. I don't think they've actually solved the issue at hand yet.
So Band-Aid on a bullet hole, delaying the inevitable.
Yeah, I think that's how I view this at the moment.
I have no argument with that. I think you're correct. I think that once this is over, it's just going to be a big bubble that bursts once again.
Yeah.
In the middle of a looming economic crisis, and I could, at a later date, I will talk about how I saw this economic crisis before the pandemic started. You heard that right, ladies and gents, before. And if you want to hear that tale, tune in a week or two from now. I'm not sure if it'll be next week's episode, but the week after. Definitely something I want to talk about. But
is that the study that we saw?
I saw not just that, but in 2018, late 2019, I looked at the German industrial deficit on a whim. I was considering investing in, I'm not sure which company I was, but somehow I ended up looking at the German industrial deficit or German industry in general, and I noticed a 2-quarter deficit. And it was just getting worse and worse, and it was a significant percentage. I think it was something like 5% below and growing. And I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. That's a major downturn in production. Remember, the Great Depression was a 2% global downturn.
I think talking about this, obviously, America's actually hitting unemployment rates and unhappiness. To be honest, all your rates are hitting Great Depression territory again.
Yep.
Not even you're past the Great Recession. You're going back towards another depression. But I think this time COVID is going to cause that to happen around the world.
Oh yeah, it's already happening. It's just not
Yeah,
being talked about.
yeah, exactly.
Probably because
There's
there's a gag order on it, or at least a universal. We're not, the media is got something of a conscience and doesn't want to sink the only fucking thing that we have going for us
yeah.
right now, which is a good stock market.
But I do think I think the extension's good, honestly, because it's at least giving reassurance to those in the pandemic that they can't be evicted. It's giving time for people. But so I'm happy at least on that. It's at least, because let's face it, mental health has declined. Again, all economies have declined. Just having some assurance at this moment is at least something for some people.
It's a straw to grasp at. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a chip on the table. It's something that we need. I agree. Anything to inspire some hope for the future.
Yeah. And then it is one of those. I mean, let's face it, the first one was under Trump. As much as people don't like the guy, I credit where credit's due on the first extension being under him in the House and Congress passing it. Same here. So actually talking about that and pointing out, obviously, what is quote unquote, and I know you have a problem with the framing of this, the Muslim ban.
Yes.
As it is referred to in media.
Yeah.
On day one, he receded the ban.
Right, and like was said, my problem was with the framing, not
yeah.
so much with the thing itself.
Yeah. Well, that's the point. Would you like to tell them your problem with the framing?
Sure. It's simply put that was more of a liberal. No, not even liberal. Let's not call it that. It was Democrat propaganda. It was never passed as any sort of ban on an entire religion or culture group. It was passed to avoid importing people from countries we're currently actively campaigning in with our military in some capacity, due to very reasonable security precautions of maybe not letting the enemy into our borders. This had incredibly, don't get me wrong, the implementation of it and everything and the way it was gone about had horrible repercussions for people who we'd already accepted prior to it. With their visas. I was never in favor of it in that regard. Even as a wartime concession, I think it went a little bit too far, further than it needed to, including excluding people who had already been vetted. But
do you agree that there's? I'm just going to ask because I think there was. Do you think there is any actual racist intent behind this or motive to it?
Yes and no. And the reason I say that is, did Trump cater to his base with this one? Yes. But is Trump ever proven himself to be inherently a piece of shit with race? Maybe. Maybe he has. Again, referencing the concentration camps on the border. Maybe he's a racist.
I think what most people point out with this would be Charlottesville for that, but
oh, for sure, but that could have again been posturing for his base.
Yeah. But yeah, that, like I said, I know it was the framing that's your biggest problem with it, and I do know you are happy that it's been receded.
I am. I am. I think it was unjust.
I mean, I think this is another thing, and I talked about it with earlier on when we were talking about the stimulus checks. Framing is very important.
Yes.
They framed it as they're going to give you $2,000 checks, and then they've, or I at least took it as that's what they meant, and they've then changed their mind on that. I
don't think they did. To be fair, I don't think they did change their mind. I think that's exactly what they meant from the beginning. Take the 600, increase it by 1,400, you get 2,000. That 600's already gone for everybody who got it. I'm positive of that. How do I know that? I paid my credit card bill with it, and I have less than $100 of that stimulus check left to ferry me to and from job interviews that I can't, get to myself or walk to myself because I can't even afford to put a car on the road right now.
But I mean, if you want to talk about it, I know this has been a big thing people have been talking about. A lot of Georgians at the moment feel betrayed because they took the $2,000 checks the same way I did.
Oh yeah.
It was one reason why in the end people voted for Joe Biden in Georgia, and it ended up biting them in the ass, so they feel betrayed.
Yes.
So I do think, the way they framed it to me was always that it was that way. So I do think, as we discussed, as you say, with the Muslim ban, framing is a stupidly important discussion point that we'll have to talk about at some other point, and
we
how
will,
it
because that leads into my views on mainstream media as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's honestly why you and me have had arguments in the past.
Yes.
You didn't understand my framing on something until I actually discussed it.
And I'd go, oh, well, I'm a gigantic fucking idiot.
Yeah. So it's a very important discussing point we'll have to talk about more. So, is there anything else you'd like to talk about within his first couple days?
Let's talk about no, let's just talk about the cabinet, shall we?
Okay, I'm fine with the cabinet picks. Should we start with arguably the most important being his VP pick?
Kamala Harris.
Yes.
A woman who I'm ashamed to admit I don't really know a tremendous amount about. I feel like she was sort of like an Obama figure in Congress. Referencing, of course, Obama's congressional career.
Yeah.
A relatively unknown. Sometimes she got her name out there, and for posturing, but did she ever do something of massive substance?
So, disregarding just her in the Senate and such, I do know some history of her. Me myself, I have a personal lot of disagreement with her. So as you know here, Michael, I've got 5 points of views that I basically call my purity test.
Right.
If you're not for at least, I'd say 2 of my 5 main points, I'm not going to support you as a candidate. I remember back in 2014, she laughed at the idea of legalizing weed.
Oh no.
Yeah, this has been something that has rubbed me the wrong way. The fact that on TV she actually laughed about it. If she'd have said no, I'd have been okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way she went about it, of the whole actually laughing about it and not realizing it's going to happen at some point. I mean, most Americans now believe in legalizing it. So it is, or at least decriminalizing it. I mean, they are 2 separate things, but most Americans now are in support of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just rubbed me the wrong way. Another problem I can specify, she once kept a man locked up who was proven innocent over technicalities. And she has been horrible in other cases when it comes to what she has done, and it shows me it's never been for her about what's right or wrong. She believes in, if she's for something and stuff, it's that case of, even if it's fucked up, she's never gonna back down. Kind of like how some people are with the Iraq war nowadays. They just try and frame it off, it was a mistake. No, they knew what they were getting into. Okay. And again, the fact it was a proven innocent man really rubs me the wrong way. Because remember, she was meant to be was she a judge? I can't remember. But anyway, she had the power to let him free, and she didn't. Is the main point that rubs me the wrong way.
Right, I do recall her anti-marijuana stances. Yes.
Yeah. And lastly, and this has been my biggest one for her, I can never remember who it was, but she knew someone when she was running wherever, was basically evicting elderly people early. And her own team turned around saying, hey, you've got to do something about this. He's evicting people before their debt.
Yeah.
She didn't prosecute him. And it's been speculated and it's been proven he donated to her. Again, it's just speculation. That is the reason she didn't do so.
Who's he? The guy in question who was doing the evicting?
Yes.
Okay.
He donated to her campaign, and again, it's not proven that is one reason why she didn't prosecute him.
Sure, but I mean,
Steve Mnuchin,
fucking...
that's it. Steve Mnuchin of is it One West Bank? He was evicting people earlier, and she never prosecuted him, and her team was even telling her to prosecute him. And I do think, like I said, it's not proof that it is that he was giving her money. Why? But I'm willing to state it shows she has some level of corruption.
It's a smoking gun, exactly.
Yeah,
it's a smoking gun.
Yeah, there's so much level of corruption, and she participates in it. And money in politics, especially in America, needs to be gone. I have a problem when people go, "Oh, the dark, unaccountable money needs to go." No, money in politics needs to go, because subconsciously, if you're getting large donations, you're going to find, even if it's not intentional, I do think you're still more to align with those people. You know, even if it's little by little, it's subconscious at least.
I could get behind that.
I don't think it's quid pro quo, I think is how the Americans phrase it. I just think it's a subtle change of mindset over time when you participate in it. And again, she's shown to participate in this, and that just drives me insane. They're my problems with her. I know something you've talked about as of late that you find interesting. A lot of the identity politics going on with the cabinet picks.
Yes.
Obviously, she falls under this being the first
female vice president. Yeah.
Yeah. That's being talked about quite a lot. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm happy there is a female vice president.
But let's talk about now, and this is a great time to interject into this, if you don't mind.
No, I don't.
Why I have a problem with identity politics in general, and especially the massive American emphasis on them, is what you were just talking about with Kamala Harris. She's a proven corrupt fucking person, right?
Yeah.
Proven detrimental to progressivism in as far as the medical marijuana or marijuana in general capacity goes.
Well, she's against. She originally She originally signed up for the Medicare for all, and then backed off that. You know, she used to say, "Oh, I was one of the first to do that," and then wanted a public option.
Yeah, right.
She really is against what the American progressives are asking for.
Right. She's pandering.
Yeah,
she's pandering. And this is why I have a problem with this fucking identity politics, right? It doesn't at all. America is not concerned. At least the voices that are crying out about these first and only celebrating these, they're not looking at who these people are.
No, they're not. And that is, as I was going to say, I'm happy there's a female vice president for the first time. Sure, it does symbolize at least some change.
Right.
However, I agree. The thing that should come first and foremost in politics is policy. You know, the whole point of it is policy.
Those first four letters. Yeah.
Yeah. And she simply, I just don't agree with.
No.
But I do agree. I'm going to say it in a way in which I like another political commentator uses it in this way. Kyle Kalinske says the bastardization of political identity.
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect way of putting it, honestly. I mean, we saw this with Hillary when she lost. She went, "Oh, well, it's because people are sexist. It's because of Russia." It's because of who you are as a candidate.
And at least one of those two claims has been proven untrue.
Yeah. But they do. They use identity politics when it suits them.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, we see this with companies when, like, as you know, both of us being a part of the LGBTQ.
Yes.
When they stick the gay pride flag on shit, they're doing it because it's symbolic. It doesn't mean anything. Right. I've brought this up many times. They're willing. Politicians will always give in on symbolism first. They will say they're for the rights, the social issues, but when it comes to fundamental change, they will oppose it.
Staunchly to preserve the status quo, yes.
Yeah. So they'll always give in on the whole, again, the identity things, because fundamentally it changes nothing.
To get meaningful change in the United States, I'd argue that you have to threaten the very stability of the status quo. It's literally that difficult in the current paradigm. You can't just write your local senator and ask them to represent your interests. That's not what they do anymore. And there's a lot of reasons why that is. But you have to have your issue become so mainstream and so furiously, adamantly argued for under threat of X, Y, and Z that the very existence of the status quo is threatened.
If you want to take two candidates that have been perfect on changing minds, Bernie Sanders and Andrew Yang.
Right.
UBI, again, was Andrew's thing, and the only reason that's ever talked about is because he fundamentally, was, this is what I'm standing for. And he was unapologetic with it, and it was changing the fundamental thing. Again, Medicare for All was Bernie's main talking point. And again, it was fundamental change to your insurance companies.
Right, and UBI is still in public discourse because look what fucking happened since he ran.
Yeah, exactly. And Medicare for All still in public discourse. So it does show that you really do have to... Policy is what's important for the American people, not the identity of people.
Right. There can be the entire cabinet can be black, Latino, African American women, and if they're all staunchly anti this or despise the very principle of Medicare for All, hate the idea of UBI, you're never going to get those things. And
now, go on, Karen, please.
Right, and what's more important as a whole is policy.
Yeah, I was going to say, if we're talking about, does Kamala Harris agree with a lot of what Joe Biden's politics are? Joe Biden is a centrist, and he admits that himself.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say an old school Republican.
Mm-hmm. But nowadays that is a centrist.
Yeah, he's a blue dog Democrat. But it is a case of, I do think him and Kamala Harris on what they believe are similar. So I don't think it's a bad pick for his VP.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if he wanted to extend the base of the party and make the base of the Democratic Party happy, I'd honestly say he'd have to have picked someone like, I don't know if she's a congresswoman or not, but Nina Turner, Bernie, maybe Elizabeth Warren, though Elizabeth Warren fucked herself more. But I think he'd have had to pick one of them if he wanted to make the progressives happy.
Maybe is that, and that's maybe another discussion for another time. But short answer, is Elizabeth Warren still in the good graces of the progressives?
For me and my ideological thought, I'd say no, not anymore. But that's the short answer, and we can discuss as we say another time why that is.
Right. And if you had to point very quickly to one issue that may have signaled a turning point for your views, what would that be?
When she attacked Bernie.
Okay.
I mean, if you ask a lot, I think that is... I'd say 2016 and attacking Bernie in this primary, it is the two mains, and it's hard to say which one has shaped more people.
Yeah, she really fucking picked the wrong one there. Yeah. Okay.
And but yeah, that's on that. But like I said, Kamala Harris herself is more of a centrist, so I do understand Biden's picking of her. If all happens to him, he's gonna want someone who believes in his ideology to, take up the country. But as you were saying, when you look at mainstream media, no one's talking about what she's famous for. They're talking about the fact she's the first female, and I don't know, is she South Asian, East Asian?
I'm not sure what her ethnic background is, but yeah, you're right. They're not talking about her now, but they sure were back when all this was going on.
Yeah, Well, she ran, didn't she, for actually being the president?
Yeah, she did.
Um,
Run an
but
unsuccessful campaign. She maybe got
tr-
a very small
all,
percentage, whether it was 5% or 3%, I can't
all,
recall.
all I ever remember, and she kind of got her wish, was, oh, we've got to ban Donald Trump from Twitter. She kept arguing that point over and over. She
Right, and
was always
there's ethical consequences for that as well. But that's a topic for another time as well.
yeah. But I do remember she was never against a lot of Trump's policies. A lot of them, she was always, how I say, a lot of the status quo were with Trump.
Yes.
It's not that they're against his policies; they're against the mean tweets.
Right. Yes.
Which I have a problem with.
Yeah, I didn't approve of most of his policies, but I mean, to say the guy's entire presidency, every minute, every second was a failure is inaccurate, but
yeah,
it's damn near close.
well, that's the thing. I don't agree with the policies, but the mainstream media and the corporate Democrats, they never talked about the policies. In all fairness, they voted for a lot of his policies.
Yes.
They just didn't like the
They didn't like the presentation.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't like the mean tweets and the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
That was their problem. Honestly, the thing I probably enjoyed most about Trump were the mean. I said this before. It's one of those silly things, but I loved his tweets. My favorite always being when it was 1 or 2 words, all caps with exclamation marks.
Yes.
It's a guilty pleasure I had, and I've told the story how I woke up not knowing the context to Obamagate, given the fact I'm 5 hours ahead of American time on the East Coast.
Yeah.
So I just woke up one day, and the first tweet I ever read was Obamagate, and still to say, it made me have to go out of my way to Google what he meant, which it shows his tweets actually made me more interested in politics from time to time.
Yeah.
And I did. It's a guilty pleasure. Still to say that I'm gonna miss, honestly, with him being off Twitter. Actually, if you want to talk more about identity politics, the Treasury Secretary, which you know quite a lot about, and I personally do not. So the reverse of us with Harris. You care to tell?
Yeah, Janet Yellen. That's the former Federal Reserve CEO during the Obama administration, specifically during the economic crisis of 2008-2009. So very fitting for her to be back reprising her role during yet another economic crisis. And I like to think that's why she was chosen, right? And though she was at odds with what Obama wanted to fix the country, which was bailing out large corporations, she wasn't in favor of bailing out the American public either. She was trying to raise the interest rate, actually, which would have sunk us further. And this is a matter of public record. You can look into this. She wanted to raise the interest rate during a time of severe economic downturn. And I'll tell you why that's not a good idea, right? You raise the interest rate on the US dollar, on the US debt, right? That lowers the GDP. When the GDP gets lower, the stock market does worse. Typically, business in America does worse. It creates massive uncertainty about the gross domestic product as a whole, which leads to downturn, which leads to further job loss, which leads to further recession. It leads to the government not being able to meet the debt, which is a major source of terror, honestly, that the average American isn't terribly tuned into, and perhaps for good reason. If everybody were sitting here thinking about the national debt all the time and what it really meant if the interest payments weren't made, the bare minimum interest payments. I'm talking inflation, like you could see the cost of a loaf of bread go from, what is it, like $4? I think from when I just bought groceries, it's like fucking $4. It's crazy, but it go from $4 to $40 million in a matter of 7 days with hyperbolic inflation. We saw that in Yugoslavia. That's of course, the worst case scenario. But during an economic downturn, you want that to raise by 0%. If anything, you want to get it lowered. And to have her as Secretary of the Treasury now, which is a bit funny because she'll be the person directly opposing the person she used to be and trying to act in the interest of the federal government. I think it's an interesting pick. She's got a colorful track record, to say the least, especially given what I mentioned about the recession.
As I say, my when I've read up or this morning when I know who we're discussing, I had a quick check and they were doing the identity politics with her as well. So
Yep.
that's a another amazing thing.
Mm.
But I'm definitely gonna have to be reading more up on her. Definitely myself. I know you and me disagree on not just our views on taxes and stuff, but I'd say our whole economic philosophy and what we agree with. I believe in the modern monetary theory, and I know you're more. I don't know if you mind me saying a more conservative view to economics in terms of how the debt and the deficit and stuff like that affect things.
I'd say libertarian, but without, I'm not fooling myself into thinking a free market is possible.
Yeah.
Or even a good idea.
Yeah. Well, that's fine then. I'll use as you say. You believe in more libertarian-ish economies.
Yes.
Again, I believe in the more modern monetary theory. But that's fine. But yeah, again, I didn't know too much about her, so I'm really gonna have to look her up. Interesting, as you said, that for a second time she's going to be handling a tragedy that's happening, an economic crisis. So she does have at least the knowledge of pressure.
Yeah, but this time, of course, on the opposite end, she's playing for the government now. Or will she bow down to banking interests? We'll see.
Yeah,
that is my main concern. As a banker, as somebody who has led the Fed, will she bow to Fed interests? When this whole issue comes a knocking.
Yeah, the whole revolving door concern. Honestly, it's a big concern because we've seen it in many other industries, the revolving door. So, fingers crossed, not. You Americans need, or the American people need a lot at the moment.
Oh, yeah. And we're going to need to keep not just the businesses afloat, but Americans afloat. Certainly before the businesses. I mean, as somebody who believes in something somewhat resembling a free market, I say give the money to the people. Let them choose who stays in business and who goes out. Right?
Yeah.
Why not? But not everyone is going to share that view. And a lot of people don't believe in, the collective power of the buyer.
Well, I think you're a capitalist through and through, aren't you? You
more
believe
or less,
in the proper,
yes.
Yeah, you believe in the proper terms of capitalism. Of they cannot make it, that is on them.
Yeah, exactly. And if they can, that's on them as well.
Yeah.
But lately, I will say my views have changed. Partly due to follow-ups to conversations we've had, where I've looked into what works and what doesn't. Right, at a much higher level of scrutiny than I would have in the past.
Yeah.
To try and prove my own case, and that's the beauty of debate. Is sometimes in trying to prove your point, you come across evidence that directly disproves your point, and it's factual. The experiment has been tried evidence, and you can't ignore that as somebody who in all good conscience is trying to make an argument. You can't. You can try to spin it, and that makes you a shyster, and I'm not a shyster. And
I think a good thing when you and me talk, obviously we're talking live now, but it's not going to be hidden from people for long. We've talked extensively about politics ourselves. It's why we're both hosting this together.
Right.
We don't, or we try not to speak over each other, try not to call and misjudge each other's points of view. We actually let each other talk, which again, the discourse is so much more needed nowadays.
Right.
But it's a case of we don't present each other with anything other than facts. We show each other the case studies, not the reporting on the case study.
Right.
And it shapes both of our views from nowadays. And I do think, as you said, just the discussion itself is so much better for us.
Oh yeah.
As you say, you don't slander me, and I will say that now. You really don't. I only feel comfortable in you calling you what you call yourself.
Right.
And that's as something we joked about before air. Nowadays, it's if you don't agree with me, you're a Nazi.
Yep.
It's
the poison against public discourse. You're either with me or you're my enemy.
This is another
cue a sound clip of Anakin Skywalker from Episode 3.
Honestly, something I talked about Kamala Harris. She wanted to ban Trump off Twitter. That instantly is already lowering public discourse. She wants to silence those she doesn't agree with.
Mm-hmm. And the parlor thing, that's a whole nother issue.
Something we discussed, and would have to talk about this on another episode. Mm-hmm. There is obviously the legal percussion of free speech, and then there is the intent behind it.
Right.
And how important are they from each other, which we'll have to discuss on another show.
We shall do. Probably next episode.
Yeah, let's talk about some more of the, obviously, people in the cabinet. Let's start with, shall we say, the Secretary of Defense as a very important role for America.
Yeah.
General Lloyd Austin, I believe it is.
And why don't you tell us about Mr. Lloyd Austin?
4 years ago, I know he was someone who did retire from the army. He was a general, which instantly is a red flag for me in having him as the defense secretary.
Right.
Because the whole, if generals and people, I believe, not everyone, but I think when you've been, the army isn't just, it's a way of life. It shapes you who you are as a person a lot of the time. And generally speaking, a lot of generals, they want more war around the world. The Middle East.
Generally speaking, am I right?
Yes, haha. But the proof is, look at the Middle East and what they tried to push. So I think having a general in the position of Secretary of Defense is going to lead to a lot more pushing for war with either other countries and a lot of American people want out of the Afghanistan war. Like, we've been there, 19? This is going to be the 20th year America has been there. The war is old. The war is old enough that it can join the war itself.
The war is old enough to drink.
Yeah, exactly.
In my country.
It's scary. Well, in mine it is as well. But it is scary enough to think that's how long this was. And again, the last poll I saw on this was like 2013, and it had like a 17% approval rating. And that was a good couple of years ago now. That's probably lower now. It's the most unpopular war in American history.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think they're not going to want to pull out of the Middle East. There's a lot of opioids there. There's a lot of natural resources there. And America fools itself into thinking it's the world police.
That is how the majority of the rest of the world perceive us, yeah.
Well, it's how America tries to perceive itself when, technically speaking, the world police would be the NATO that we have.
Forgive me. The rest of the world perceive us as insurrectionists.
The problem, we see it as the greatest world threat to world peace.
Right.
We see you toppling all these governments and regime change.
And the American public, by and large, see us the same as well. Yes.
Yeah. And so having a general, and again, he retired 4 years ago. That's not a case of, you're just gonna get, you're gonna see things from a different light than what you did in the army. It takes more than 4 years to objectively look at things, I think.
Right. Career military man with career military loyalty.
Yeah.
And the whole point of, having civilian oversight is that it's civilian, right?
Yeah.
So when you kind of breach that line, it's similar to the Janet Yellen argument that I made at the close that we were talking about, is where will his loyalties lie?
Yeah.
With the American public or with the U.S. military? And why is it a bad thing that a civilian oversight would be loyal to the other side? And I think you just touched on a good reason as to why that is generally speaking, more war. And interestingly enough, war with Iran has been something that the political right in this country has had a boner for at least the last 8 years.
Yeah.
It's a fucking raging erection. Our aircraft carriers have blue balls, And
I mean, honestly, the left has been pushing. Well, I say the left. Sorry, the Democratic Party. Because again, it's not the left; it's the corporate lefty, the corporate Democrats. Honestly, been pushing Russia to have more either sanctions or, to be honest, sometimes just straight up attack Russia.
Which historically we all know is a terrible idea.
Yeah, it is a thing of, at the moment, there are a lot of places America wants. Venezuela, that being another one people want the top. I mean, America literally, I can never remember his name, but remember, you were pushing around that guy pretending he was the person ruling Venezuela.
Oh yeah,
even when he wasn't. And you took him to like the G12 conference and everything.
His name might as well have been Snoke. Irrelevant. Completely fucking nobody. But we just went to the world. He's the president of Venezuela.
Yeah. So it's a case, but the best bit is no one questioned it. It's America doing American things.
Yeah, it's fine. Just let him have it.
But it has shown, you are. I mean, look at you in South America / Central America. You've toppled more places. You had a banana war there. So you know
the banana republics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or with that whole industry.
Yeah. So you've got a history of why having a person of his status there could lead to issues.
Yep.
So it's, again, as I said, it's going to be one of those, we have to see where their loyalties lie.
Correct.
I think the last one we'd have to speak about is the Secretary of State.
Okay.
I'm going to admit I don't know too much about them. That's Anthony Blinken. I know he was a part of the Obama administration. That's about as much as I know. I can't say he was a name that stood out back in the Obama administration.
No. I can think of one name that did.
So this, and I know it's only his first term he served. I think it was he served with Obama. I don't think he did all 8 years under Obama. I think it was only. So I really am curious to see what's going to happen. Because again, it's an important job.
Right. Typically, you think of Secretary of State. That's pretty much. Pardon, apologies for the phone going off in the background there. I'll keep that muted from here on out.
I mean, if a part of the Obama administration, I mean, Biden, and obviously he uses the fact he was the vice president under Obama quite a lot. And I do think this is a reason why he's going to work with this person. He's got that knowledge already of how they view things, how they work. So it's, familiar waters, so to speak. So going to definitely. Again, I don't know what to think of him at the moment. He's just, like I said, a name I'm not that familiar with personally. But of course, just knowing who he is, an important thing to know.
Yeah, I believe the Secretary of Transportation or Environment is the same as the Obama administration as well.
What you said? Transport is Mayor Pete, isn't it? Pete Buttigieg. I can never say his last name. Buttigieg.
I'm not sure how to pronounce it either. Buttigieg, maybe.
Buttigieg, yeah. I think it's Boot. Yeah. However you say it. Mayor Pete. Old friendly Mayor Pete.
Mayor Pete.
Obviously, he also ran for the 2020 president, so we already know his views on a lot of things. He's someone who backed down from Medicare for All for a public option. He's, in his own words, he's quite centrist, which, again, fitting for the whole Biden president. So I am annoyed people bringing up the whole LGBTQ rights around him at the moment. Like, they've just forgot everything he ran on his presidential debate.
Right. I think. Do
Go
you
on.
think that maybe all of that is going on because, just to play devil's advocate here for the identity politickers, a large portion of women, of minority population in this country, and of LGBTQ members felt that they either were going to be or were persecuted during the time of Trump. Do you think that that is the emphasis on the identity politicking? Do you think that's the reason for it?
I do not.
Okay.
And the reason being, we have seen the Democrats have been doing this for a long time. They're going to placate this because fundamentally they're not going to do anything that helps these communities. They want to put a symbol there without, like I said earlier, they're willing to give up all symbolism to pretend to be for something. But when it comes down to helping them, they're not. Like, honestly, a real good example of this, the drug war, if they really cared so much about the African American community and about stuff, then you'd actually want to do policy that'd help those communities.
Certainly.
But instead they just go, see, we're against racism, we're for good things, against bad things, and oh look, black African American was running the countries. And it's like, yeah, but what are you actually going to do for these communities? Now, under Trump, I'd say Trump also tried to go for the LGBTQ. If you remember in 2016, holding up the rainbow flag, he did try to placate them. Against trans rights, he was awful. Against actual gay rights, I wouldn't say so much, but the trans community, I think they are the ones probably that were most targeted by Trump. I think
I would agree by and large, yes.
Yeah. Women's rights were attacked in terms of the abortion rights and such, but I think that had been the same regardless, with it being a Republican nominee. Generally speaking, stuff like abortion and that they crack down on through overregulate. The way they do it, because obviously Roe versus Wade means that they have to allow abortions. They generally do overregulation to limit the amount that's being done. So I think they're the things, but largely speaking, I don't think the LGBTQ or women had that worse of a time compared to what was going on with Obama. Their issues were still never addressed. I think it's just been the same for them. Their issues are not being heard. I think this is just symbolism for the sake of pretending whilst not having to change anything. And I think it's so that they can play the identity card of, if you say anything against them, they can go, oh, don't be a sexist, don't be a racist. It's to use it as a tool as well.
As a cudgel to beat the opposition with. Right. Okay.
It's not even that. Honestly, it's to beat the progressives with. The culture war, we are losing so many people on the battlefield of the culture war. The culture war, this is honestly one reason why Trump lost. He started going about the culture war, about statues coming down, about the this and that. He wasn't actually addressing any. The problem I have with the culture war, it doesn't address people's problems. It's in at least a substantive way, and that, by and large, the culture war is more a division, I'd say, where the policies are what's going to fix it.
Right.
And so many people are just lost in the culture war. And the Democrats, they use identity against their base because we are against, honestly, so are most Republicans. The Republican voters I distinguish from the elected Republicans. But a large amount of the Republicans are against racism, are against sexism.
That is the typical default setting at birth, yes.
Yeah. And it's a case of, if we speak out against, let's say, Kamala Harris, the Democrats are going to go, you can't say that, she's a woman, and you guys say you're all for women's rights. They use it against us to shut us up. So it's...
The mere fact that we have in 2020, two presidents taking a debate stage, and the question of are you opposed to racism even comes up, I think is a sign of how deeply divided this country has become due to a number of factors, a lot of them directly related to the Donald Trump presidency and the man himself, but due to more factors than just that.
I think a reason being with Biden, he wrote the crime bill. He was for segregation of busings. There are a lot of sketchy stuff when you look in his history of, wait a minute, you know, again, he wrote the crime bill, the bill that has been known to demolish the African American community. You know, he was for the segregation of buses.
Was he?
Yeah. He worked with segregationists back in the day.
Right, people like to, you look at his age, but people don't realize that he's been in politics a
very, very long time, yeah.
And they also don't remember that for the majority of the post-apartheid history, the Democratic Party was the party of apartheid.
Well, yes, it was, but you also have to. The problem with this is it's not acknowledging there was a political shift, and
that the Democrats, of course, became the party of, you know, some version of equality against a party that had become staunchly opposed to it for X, Y, and Z reason.
Yeah. Dinesh D'Souza, he's basically made his career out of not acknowledging that political shifts are a thing, and that's what happened with the Democratic Party. Yeah, they were the racist, they were the segregation party, but then they had a political shift.
Right, and just like there was a political shift way back then, there is a political shift in 2016, and the tool that we use to measure acceptable public discourse is called the Overton window. Yeah. A lot of people disagree with it, but there's no question that window, or at least has certainly shifted. To the point where on television, as I said earlier, a president has to openly denounce racism.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I agree. What the fuck? But like I said, I personally think past record is the best indication of future record.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at Joe Biden's past record, there's a lot of sketchy shit.
You're correct. Past record is a strong indicator of future record. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's not accurate because some people do grow and change. Right. Yeah. But I think when you've got one as long as Biden's, it really shows. Honestly, another problem I had with Biden was, look at him when he wrote the crime bill and is one of the reasons there is the war on drugs.
Yes.
Now, as much as it's awful that he's lost his son and that in the past, you look at what he was like with his son. When his son was addicted to drugs, what did he do? Want to put him in rehab, which is great. I'm all for that. But then when it came to people he didn't know, he wants to lock them up for drug use. It's a double standard that honestly pisses me off. Why is it only your son that gets the special case and not everyone else? Why? It's... He cannot distinguish against it, and it annoys me. You should love everyone, you know? It's...
And... right.
To a certain extent, I say, but...
At least, you know, respect your fellow man.
Yeah, exactly.
And when I say fellow man, I mean that in the traditional sense of human, not man or woman. Yeah, I feel like you have to specify that nowadays.
No, but this is a problem, as you said, that the discourse has been split into two discourse now.
Yeah.
As we were saying, you've got the culture war, which are the whole, oh, well, why... saying this is sexist or saying that sexist, doing this is racist.
Right.
It's like, no, it's... As something you and me said, people are no longer looking at things for its time. Like, this annoys me with a lot of censorship. Some stuff that was made in the 90s gets censored nowadays when it's like, that was allowed in the 90s.
Right.
And does it make it right or wrong? No. but you have to acknowledge, culturally speaking, that was what was accepted.
Right.
Again, as much as I oppose slavery, back then it was before the Civil War America had, it was viewed as allowed.
Oh yeah.
We have to realize as time goes on, we do get more and more tolerant of things. But you can't force tolerance.
No.
It has to naturally grow. But the culture wars seems to not understand this. And it's trying to now determine what people can and can't say, or can and can't do, and it leads to a massive backlash.
But it's not just going forward, is it, with transgender issues? It's going backward as well.
On certain things, yeah, it's doing a bit of both. On certain stuff, it is going forward. I'd say trans rights are thankfully now being talked about, being discussed. Are they there where they need to be fully yet? No, they're really not.
And there's plenty of right, and there's plenty of segregated and or separate opinions, I should say, in the spirit of trying to promote my point. There's separate arguments for and against. There's separate arguments for details of the finer points of for and against, and so on and so forth. But the general consensus is they're people too. All right.
Yeah.
And that spans, I like to think, based on personal encounters or whatever. That spans the aisle, both sides of the aisle. Is there people too?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That a lot of people like to frame the Democrats as in what is now being called the radical left. Like, if I say I'm left, someone thinks I'm instantly a part of the radical left.
Correct.
As it's being quote unquote called.
That's what the Overton window has shifted to.
Yeah.
Is you're an extremist, you're an all black waving an Antifa flag around, and you're burning my car because
and if
I disagree.
And if someone says they're a Republican, if someone says they're a Republican, people think they're this racist, sexist, homophobic.
Right, you conjure the image of the stereotypical hick with the rebel flag and the buck teeth and all of 2 teeth in your mouth, fucking your sister, all that.
Yeah, and they're really not.
No.
And it is, again, as you said, the discourse gone. I mean, I think a reason why so much is going back on itself. People are starting, and we discussed it with climate change, people are starting to disagree with science. And this is a problem. We were talking about transgenderism, but let's extend it. And this has turned a lot of people against the LGBTQ. This whole thing of there's X amount of genders. I don't even know how many there are nowadays, honestly.
Yeah.
But this is turning some people against the LGBT. It makes it harder sometimes to fight for certain issues because the discourse has got out of hand.
Yeah, that was something that had to have been cooked up in an echo chamber somewhere. I don't even know any transgender people, and I don't want to use the me versus what I know argument, but I have to in this case. I don't know fucking anybody who embraces that.
Well, I'm not ashamed to admit this, and as you know, I have dated someone who is hermaphrodite.
Yeah.
And even with them, they didn't do this I'm gender fluid thing. And it's a case of she preferred to be called she.
Okay.
Yeah. And that I respected that. It's like, if someone wants to be called them or they, I really will respect that.
I've met her, quite a pleasant woman. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is that thing of I think there is that thing of you have to be respectful towards someone if they want to be called them, they.
Of course, it's basic personal respect. If you have a thing you want to be called, I'm gonna But I've never heard anybody say I want to be called zygote or flambaganga magongalong or whatever. Obviously being hyperbolic, but yeah.
But I do think a part of it that caused a lot of problems is this whole thing. There is still a reality of facts. And when it comes to the gender issue, your chromosomes can be done in so many ways. Again, I state myself personally, I believe in 4 genders: the male, the female, the hermaphrodite, and the transgender. Now, that's all medically. So scientifically, there's technically 3. But I add the trans one because I see there is a medical distinction between all 4 genders.
Right.
A trans person, if they are actually going through transition or have been through transition, their bodies can't take certain medication or can't go through certain things because it's gone through change.
And there has to be that distinction for that reason, yes.
Yeah. And so that's why, as you say, I have that distinction. It's knowing the medical difference. But for some of the others, I myself, and again, this is part of the culture war, but I don't understand them. Now, if someone sat down with me and could make an argument for why, no, it's different from the rest, and, you know, I'd listen. But the thing that also annoys me is just because it makes you feel better doesn't make it any less thing. I don't think the argument from psychology is enough to merit.
Well, the argument from psychology is it's no longer an argument from psychology, isn't it? It's no longer considered to be, gender dysphoria is no longer considered to be a mental disorder.
That's true, yeah. Which, to be honest, I do understand why America slapped it down. It did used to get put on people that didn't have it. It just used to get slapped on anyone. Like, especially against trans people.
Oh, yeah.
It really, really did get slapped on them.
And that's another keynote, is not every trans person is gender dysphoric.
No, they're not.
Okay.
But I do think it is something we have to. I think we need to reevaluate with psychology on. We have to get a better understanding of what it is and how to help people with it. Because one fact that really upsets me, there is a higher suicide rate in transgender people.
Yes.
After they transition.
Yes.
Not before, after they transition.
Yep.
That really upsets me.
And a lot of people attribute it to various factors. Bullying is the most easily disprovable one. I think 40% of an entire demographic isn't killing itself because it's being bullied or not.
No, but I do think bullying is a heavy part of it.
For sure.
Because I'm going to say this, and people might disagree with me, I'm fine with. But I do think when you're constantly pushed, like, I think there's a difference between personal bullying and societal bullying.
Yeah.
When you're not accepted after, I think the big problem is a lot of them still are not accepted after they transition.
Yes, and if you combine that bullying with the fact that they can't, say, call themselves a female on a passport or on a driver's license or anything like that, when you compound the fact that they have to still register as their assigned birth sex on everything in terms of
doing it to them, yeah.
Right. It creates a bad mental place. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Maybe "but" is the wrong word, because I am in favor of making concessions to make them feel more comfortable in their in whatever they prefer. I am 100% in favor of that, and I don't want to give the impression that I'm not.
Yeah.
But for and I hate to make one of these stupid fucking hypothetical arguments, and I'm just going to go ahead and apologize and make it anyway. Hypothetically, you've got a criminal. They abuse the system, change their gender and sex and name, right?
Right.
Create a pretty much clean name for themselves, get a job, that they wouldn't have been able to get because of their record and so on. I don't want to say that one person abusing the system is the reason we can't have anything. But it is a somewhat, I suppose, it's certainly a far more legitimate concern than the bathroom rape thing.
Oh, yeah. I think the only thing I disagree with that is just because you change your name and gender doesn't mean your record gets erased from you.
Oh, for sure. But, for the matter of public opinion, if you take Edward Snowden becomes, I don't know.
This is something I want to talk to about Christopher Manning, Edward Snowden, and Julian Assange. And one of those has been, has changed gender and has gone through a massive thing. Now, I do, on a later episode, want to talk about whistleblowers and our views on. Mainly for the fact, honestly, I hope you don't mind me saying, you did work for the government at one point.
Yes.
The federal government, even. So your views and mine are from two different perspectives on this, I think.
For sure.
So I really do want to see where we fall upon that argument at some point.
Okay.
But
I would be glad to have that discussion.
I think as well, it's also hard for us to talk about these issues and be truly objective because we don't know what they're going through.
No, we don't. And not one of us has lived a second in the lives of the people who are affected by these policies or lack thereof. Not a second. And I agree with that. And that's why I'm okay with acquiescing to certain things immediately without discussion. I don't think that we should change the entire structure of government language to be a gender.
Yeah.
I think that's a little ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But I think that we should provide options. He, she, they should be freely selectable on a driver's license, because at the end of the day, what does it really fucking matter? And the argument is supposed to be for keeping track of, people being who they are. But if a police officer at a traffic stop, the place you're most likely to present your license besides buying liquor, firearms, or tobacco, is stopping this person, and they see male with a male photograph because they don't let you update your photograph in certain situations. I don't know if you were aware of that, but
I would not know. That's the thing. That actually, if you want to talk, that there are, without changing certain things, and I think this leads me to also how the African American community are. They need political change.
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, we need policies put in place to help them.
Yes.
So if you say you can't update your photo whenever, make it so you can update it whenever you wish.
Yeah. So having to wait X amount of years,
Yeah. As you said, why not change it so that, it's he, she, they on the application form, right, or on any application form.
Don't base that on your birth certificate and social security number. Base that on your selection, right?
Yeah.
Why don't we? That's so simple. That's a very simple, basic thing we could do tomorrow.
Yeah. That's the thing, that instead of trying to shape the social discourse, actually put, and this is the same for, as I said, with the African American community. Sometimes it's not about getting society to accept them, it's about having that legal representation.
Yes.
Because before gay marriage, socially they was accepted most places, not everywhere. There are still, in my country, in your country, pockets that are not, generally speaking, they are religious fundamentalists of some order.
That's the main opposition in most countries, including this one, correct?
That just do not agree with gay rights. But socially speaking, they was accepted before marriage was allowed.
Yes.
But the thing is, once they actually got that legal representation, honestly, gays and lesbians have very little now to fight against. If it is, it's a social matter they've got to fight against. Because legally, they have got that representation.
Now that is... Yeah.
Go on.
On that, very important side note here. Maybe this is the propaganda getting to me. I can't remember who it was who took a photograph with that lady who famously opposed the government's ruling that on gay marriage and refused to let this gay couple get a marriage license. It's somewhere in the South. I think Georgia, maybe?
Right.
I don't remember if it was which president it was. Was it Barack Obama or Donald Trump who posed with her in a picture after she did that and was given a pardon? It must have been Obama.
I'm not
Presidents
sure.
usually only make pardons on their way out. It must have been Obama.
Okay. Again, I'm not too sure on that story, so I can't.
I'm fuzzy on it because there's just so much fucking propaganda.
But no, it is. I think once the legal representation is on paper, a lot of the social discourse disappears on it. Not all the time, and it's hard. I mean, there are some. Take you and me, for example. We're both aces. We're both asexual.
Right.
We don't need legal representation.
No.
We're a very, very, very small percent of the world. And even then, legally, there's nothing for us to fight against. If we want to marry someone of the same sex, we now can. If we
Mhm.
want to marry someone of the opposite sex, we now can.
Right.
You know, and it's a case of what is there for us to fight legally on rights for?
Pretty much not
And
a fucking thing. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Socially,
The right to not fuck? What?
yeah. Again, socially, okay, if you want to say it kind of annoys you how some people don't know what asexual means or have never heard of it.
I mean, it was annoying, when at first coming out and identifying that way, to constantly be called a plant or a ficus or, fucking an amoeba or whatever. But,
Yeah.
Apart from that mild annoyance, no real trouble.
No, but that's what I'm saying. It's socially, that has to be a fight done with society and how it views things.
Right. And even if you don't achieve societal acceptance straight away, to have the fact that you can pull out your driver license with the picture of you with your chosen sex,
it helps a lot more. Yeah. And I honestly think political discourse would die down about it more. It'd become a lot more. I think things are a lot more acceptable when. I mean, a good example would be Jim Crow laws. When we got rid of those, people became a lot more accepting of the African American community.
Right, like almost overnight. Yeah.
And I do think having the legal representation matters more, because that then frames social discourse. And at the moment, we're just screaming into the social discourse with nothing happening.
Oh yeah. Nothing's going to continue to, and that's. I hate to call it the brilliance of Donald Trump, but it really is in a fucked up kind of way.
Oh, yeah.
He just kept the discourse going, right? Nothing ever got done because he achieved a state of just paralysis where nothing could get done. Because he radicalized the extremists on the left and the right to the point where they both sounded equally insane, and anything that they suggested was ridiculous. Yeah, Black Lives Matter became a villain due to this discourse. It all started with fucking the Colin Kaepernick. The quarterback for the 49ers. Yeah, it all started there.
Yeah,
with the villainizing of that man taking a knee.
Yeah. And still to this day, he is a hero. I think in time he will remembered like what's the boxer called again? Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
Again, he was villainized for opposing the Vietnam War.
Correct.
As he said, I'm not going to go fight any Vietnamese. They've done no wrong to me.
Mm-hmm.
And he was villainized in his time. I think Colin Kaepernick's going to be the same, but in history, he will be remembered as doing the right thing.
Oh yeah.
But no, going back to, because we've gone way off topic here with things.
It was good discourse, which is why it allowed it, and I think that next week we're going to definitely have a format
discussion on it. Yeah,
a format change to the show in general. I think we'll cover in brief the news.
Yeah,
and then move into one or maybe two topics that we'll have an extended discussion on. I think we'll shoot for an hour and a half.
Yeah, but to just bring it back to whilst we are on this format, again, as we said, you look at the discourse around all of everything happening now. Media discourse has changed since the Biden administration, almost overnight.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, it was overnight.
Yeah, quite literally. It was, they went from the very villainizing to now pretending everything's happy-go-lucky.
They're sucking everyone's dick because of the color of their skin and the what's in their pants. That's what's going on.
Well, it's not even just that. It's also a case of, no offense, this is the status quo now that has taken over.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's, again, the original status quo that's taken over.
Yep.
As much as Trump continued the status quo, he didn't have the nice face.
No.
This is now the status quo having the nice face again.
Right.
And it is
a sweet in argument, a sweet child sniffing old man.
Yeah, and it's a case of this is what we now. The discourse, I think, again, is going to change in these next 4 years because people are going to pretend it's war back to normal.
He will accomplish nothing of any real substance. This is my prediction. He will accomplish nothing of any real substance. Bernie Sanders' plea for the Democrats not to fail again. They will fail again with the overwhelming majority in government. They will fail again. He will accomplish nothing of meaningful significance, and he will be lauded and loved for it. I guarantee it. Just like Obama, just like Bush, just like Clinton, just like all of them.
Well, at least when Bush left office, 29% approval rating, same as Trump actually, which shocked me. That did shock me massively. Did the fact that Trump managed to get that low in approval rating?
Though some outlets reported that it was lower.
Yeah,
put him at 17%. Which is up for dispute, of course. I think it was. I think it was a tie for worst ever rather than worst ever.
Yeah,
but you know, he didn't leave with the media calling him a terrorist or a Nazi. Bush.
No, he didn't. No, though terrorist you can state.
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah, you can.
But no, it is real. I think my prediction is going to be everything that happened to Obama. They're going to have the majority. They're going to try and do the bipartisanship, which they don't need. They can reconciliation it all. 51 votes. Yep. Stop trying to do the filibuster of 60 votes.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to get anything done. So when the local elections come up, they're going to lose the seats again, just like Obama did. And really, shit ain't changing. I mean, the only thing I'm actually happy about is the federal minimum wage going to 15%. I honestly think that's the biggest change that we're going to see in his time.
The federal minimum wage, hypothetically, going to $15.
Yeah.
That has not been done yet. It is, in all likelihood, going to be done.
Well, I know he has signed something to do for federal workers getting $15.
Yes.
So I am hoping that pushes everything to $15. But I think it will, personally.
Perhaps it will in time, and it'll be a watered-down, half-assed version that won't go into effect until 2025 or 2028.
Well, that is generally how they do it anyway. You slowly increase they'll say, we're going to increase the federal minimum wage 15%, but that would be probably over 3 years, going from, let's say, 10 to 12 to 14 to 15. But I think that will be probably the most significant thing. And I reckon everything else is going to be exactly how it was under Obama.
Mm-hmm. Including the handling of the looming economic crisis.
Yeah. That's my prediction for it.
If the pandemic ever subsides and the excuse to pump money into the economy with it.
Yeah. So, and yeah, honestly, thinking about it, we are going to have to see how he handles COVID. That's going to also be a major factor.
It needs to be legislative. There need to be consequences. You can't just go on TV and go, guys, could you please just wear masks?
So
we tried that. It didn't work.
As for what's going to happen internationally, it is just a wait and see, I think, at this moment. Mm-hmm. I've got bad feelings on it, but I hope I'm wrong.
I hope you are too. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah. But to be honest, we're still in the first. Well, are we in the first week? So I believe we are. Yeah.
We're in the first week, and there's going to be a lot more to come. It's very difficult to call at present, and in all fairness, can't be called at present.
Yeah.
We can only go based on what we've seen in the last 7 days. So stick with us, America. There's a brand new president in office, a brand new administration, most of which hasn't even been cleared to begin serving yet. The cabinet has not yet been officially approved. It will be. It's all a formality, of course, but the cabinet has yet to officially take office. And I think once this administration really gets rolling, after the first 100 days, we'll have a good mile marker for where we're going to be.
I think our best bet is to come back, after the 100 days and see what's happened.
Oh, yeah. We'll have a big before and after. I think that'll be a lot of fun.
Anyway, to be honest, I think that's all we wanted to really discuss on this first episode.
Yep. to wrap up, there will be a format change next week, and probably a few more from there on out.
So we actually ground
I
ourselves.
like the discussions that we end up having, and I think I want to emphasize those over news reporting because there's plenty of fucking sources
News
for
reports. Yeah. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
And I think that you guys listening along will enjoy that as well.
Actually, that is a point. With this being general, obviously discourse, well, if we ever see, because we are going to be putting this on places, obviously for you to listen to. If you ever have anything for us to want to talk about or anything you want clarifying, letting us know would really help a lot.
YouTube will be the best resource for that. Leave it in the comments section. I will be checking that. You can't really interact too much on Spotify, and also we have our Twitter. A link will be in the description of this video.
Twitter will be a good discourse as well. But yeah, please let us know anything you want elaborating, discussing. We'll try and obviously add it in and keep the discussions going for you all.
Oh yeah. You guys have stake here as well. We're, not a network publication. We got you. Whatever you want to hear talked about, we got you. Because sometimes, as much as we can contend with each other on things that we'll just bring up in the natural flow of things, it'd be nice to have an outsider determining that as well.
Yeah, I don't know about Michael here, but I know me personally, I'm hoping once we get a name for ourselves, we can obviously then probably get third people in to help us discuss matters.
I think guests would be wonderful to have, and we could even maybe consider moving to 2 shows a week in that case, where we have a guest and then our usual show.
Yeah. So keep in mind this is the first episode. There's still stuff to sort out for us, but
plenty, especially how chaotic this has been. But
yeah.
If you survive the first episode, it will only get better from here, guys.
Yeah. So thank you as well, just for taking the time to listen to 2 cunts argue.
We appreciate it, and I hope it has inspired you to have discussions of your own with your friends, and realize that maybe you don't have to hate each other for disagreeing. Anyway, this is Michael.
And I've been Shane.
Have a beautiful day, evening, night, whatever it may be for you. And we will catch you all next time.
Bye-byes.
Bye. And we're